What's up, guys? My name is Tai Zen. Welcome to the cryptocurrency.market channel. This is a trading, investing, and entrepreneurship channel. I have a special guest here today, Dominik Weil. Say hello, Dominic.
Hello, hello.
We are broadcasting from District 4 in the beautiful city of Ho Chi Minh City today in southern Vietnam in Southeast Asia. And I wanted to share with you guys Dominik Weil's story here in Vietnam. I thought it was very interesting for someone from Germany to come down here and set up the first Bitcoin meetup and the first Bitcoin exchange here in Vietnam. So let's start by sharing with our audience here, man, a little bit about your background. Like you're from Germany, what area and what inspired you to come down here?
Born and raised in Frankfurt, the economic center of mainland Europe. Lived there for 30 years, before then in 2014 making the move over here to Vietnam. So it's now over half a decade already.
In Vietnam?
Yeah.
So out of all the Asian countries, what inspired you to come here to Vietnam? Why not Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, or places like that?
Economic opportunity, but also family ties.
So your spouse, girlfriend?
Yes,
or
married here since like 2013 with a local wife. And we had to make the decision basically, okay, do we move to Germany or Vietnam? And if you just look at the trajectories of both economies, like Europe, Germany is
going down.
Yeah, not much opportunity.
Yeah.
While in Vietnam, you basically wake up every morning and have 5 new ideas what you could do.
Yeah, this is a massive, if you're one of those risk takers and one of those entrepreneurs that like to take risks and like new stuff, as you can see back here behind us, we have a bustling, what is this, a farmer's market or whatever, and it happens quite often. And that's why we wanted to shoot this video outdoors in front of this market, so you guys can get like a glimpse of what downtown Vietnam looks like, right? So there's other areas in the new areas, like in District 1 and District 2, where they got all the high risers and everything. But right here, we like this backdrop here, and this is what inspired us to come to Vietnam here. So talk about how you got into the cryptocurrency space. And what year did you first hear about Bitcoin, and how did you hear about it?
I heard about it by my old friend Alex. He mentioned it the first time, and I recently researched the exact date. It was 26th of November 2012.
2000, man, dude.
Yes. So I had to download from Facebook like all the data and chats to search, okay, when the first time did he mention it to me?
Yeah.
So yeah, 26th of 11, 2012. Starting out from my side with all these basic questions, okay, who's printing this stuff? What's the value behind? So also myself started out somewhere with all these newbie questions one might have if one is interested in the space. Took me then a few months to really get into it. Started reading about it because, I mean, the first time you hear about it, you have all these doubts like, okay, how can this work? What happens if this and this happens? And doing your research, you find out, okay, most of the time there's a plausible answer, which starts to get more convinced about this stuff.
Yeah.
And basically after these 3 months of my research, I knew this is going to be like a big game changer and I have to get more involved. So I made already the decision basically then after these 3 months, I have to quit my job and really get into it. It took then still a year until I quit my job and then also moved to Vietnam.
And what kind of job were you doing at that time? Because people think that, you know, like, were you in technology or what kind of work were you in?
Just some kind of finance-related corporate job there in Frankfurt. Nothing too exciting, more like just another cog in the machine.
Yeah.
So, but I knew this is basically like the internet wave of our generation.
So to help out the new viewers who are now getting into Bitcoin, you know, like what were like the top 1 or 2 concerns you had about Bitcoin? Like for example, like for me, like I was thinking like, why does this thing have value? I know some people ask like, who's backing Bitcoin or things like that. Did you have any concerns like that?
Yes, I mean that was one of my first questions because I come more from like kind of economics background.
Yeah.
So of course I read already like the book like Friedrich August von Hayek, Denationalization of Money and all these kind of things. So I was kind of sensitized already that with like government fiat currencies is maybe not the best tool out there available.
Yeah.
But of course, when you the first time come around like Bitcoin, and it's like such a breakthrough, such a new invention which never was there. Like, what do you mean? There's nobody behind it. It's like completely decentralized and what. So to wrap your head around this and really understand how all the actors in the ecosystem are incentivized to keep the system running without having the central party. It took a while, but once you get it and understand how these things work, you just like your mind is blown away, and that's.
And when was like when did you first buy your first Bitcoin or piece of a Bitcoin? And what year, what price would you say?
Must have been like something around mid-March 2013, so around $50 or so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Was right at the time then also, which escalated my research when like in Cyprus was like a banking crisis back then, and they basically just took out half of the money which people had in their bank accounts to bail out the government and the banks.
Yeah, I think they called it like a financial haircut.
Yeah.
Where they just went to everybody's account, where however much you had in there, and they would just trim a little bit of it, like they trim our hair, you know, like as if it was nothing, you know.
Yes, and I mean, Cyprus is a country, member state of the European Union. It's not like your random third world dictatorship in Africa where you would expect this. It was like, hey dude, if they are doing something like this in a country of the prestigious European Union, maybe it's time to do something really, because it's coming closer.
So what did you see like after you made your first Bitcoin purchase, and obviously you probably sent it back and forth just to make sure that it was working correct, you know? What was there an aha moment where you realized, hey man, this is not fake, this is not like garbage, like this is for real now, like hey, this is legit, like this is so the people that are new to Bitcoin, whether they're in Europe or Asia or the Americas, like what was the turning point or the key? What event took place where you said, hey man, you know, this is really legit here. This is not like garbage.
I mean, this conviction I had at the point where I did my first purchase already.
Yeah.
If people still remember who were in this at the time, around the Cyprus crisis, we also were leading up to like the first bubble in 2013. A lot of people forget about it, but Bitcoin was rising from like $10 to like over $260 within like 3 months. So like 25-fold in 3 months. That's much bigger than the last couple of bubbles we had.
Yeah.
So I bought my first couple of Bitcoins, and basically within a few weeks it was like 5-fold, and was like, oh man, I should have bought fucking more. But then within 2 days it crashed back down to $50.
Yeah.
It's volatility we don't have in the markets anymore, but back then it was much smaller. Like within 2 days basically 260 back down to 50. That was the only cycle where I was really a bit like, nah.
You were nervous?
I mean, I felt uncomfortable with the later bubbles. Yeah, I didn't care anymore, because then I was already so much convinced that, whatever, it's going up and down.
So would you say that you were fortunate, or you were lucky, or it was helpful that you experienced the first bear market so quickly within a couple of weeks after you purchased your first Bitcoin?
Yes, this, and also that like my friend Alex, who brought me into Bitcoin, he bought his first Bitcoin at like $7 in 2012, but sold out at $10.50 in January 2013.
Yeah.
And this was also for me. I mean, once I understood the economics, I said I had kind of some background there.
Yeah.
I knew that's maybe probably not the smart thing to do, to sell this early, because if this thing is really going to take off, the risk reward is tremendous. Yeah. So playing the markets there, I didn't do this from early on basically. Yeah. So that Alex basically, he could have been retired by now. I think his average entry is now maybe $100 per Bitcoin, so it's still good, but he basically missed out on like a 10x move, because he didn't fully understand the potential there at the time.
So the first lesson here, guys, is make sure you hold on to make some life-changing profits, and not just 5 or 10% or a few bucks and then sell out. So from there, what got you into the where did you go from there, and what led up to the desire to open up a Bitcoin exchange?
So I said I was then thinking already in spring 2013, okay, we have to get more involved. Back then still living in Frankfurt. So the first thing we did back at the time was then like summer 2013 also starting the community in Frankfurt, which is kind of surprising, like financial capital, but there was not really any community around.
Yeah.
So you had something going on in Berlin and also a few people like in Cologne and so on, but Frankfurt didn't have anything. So really old school, you went to Bitcoin Talk, which was like the only place people really discussed the stuff online, and just like, hey, is there anybody in around Frankfurt who wants to talk about this stuff and meet up in real life? So we created the community there. Ahead of the first meetup, maybe a dozen people showing up.
Yeah.
And the energy and the vibe you had, I mean, it was very interesting because like these early Bitcoin days, you had really only like these fringe people kind of in there, like anarchists, these hackers, nerds, politically motivated people. So a very, very interesting group of people which came together there, which is not your average person by all means.
You know what's interesting is in those early days, you know, because I did the same thing, but in the United States, in the state of Texas, where I was from. And it's interesting how in those early days, people were very unified. You know, it didn't matter if it was the anarchists or the libertarians or any of those groups of people. Whoever was involved in Bitcoin in 2012, 2013, 2014, there was a very, I guess, how do you say this, a unified front. There was a lot of harmony. Everybody's trying to promote Bitcoin and promote the advancement of Bitcoin. You know, unlike the divisiveness we have in the Bitcoin community today. I miss those days, you know.
Yes. I mean, in the old days, like the energy and vibe you had there, and also like when I went to my first conference, I mean, we have to imagine back then there was not really much going on in terms of conference. Now you have like every second day some blockchain, whatever conference. Back then you had in 2013 one big conference in San Diego. I think later in the year there was like another one like in Atlanta or something. And in Europe you had then one big one in Amsterdam. And that was it. But it also meant that you had like in the room there in Amsterdam was like 150 people maybe. Basically everybody who mattered from Europe was coming there.
Yeah.
And also quite a lot of the people from the US came over there. It was really that small. Back in the time you could read every article written about Bitcoin because it was like 2 articles written per week in some mainstream publication about it.
Yeah, I remember in 2013 when we started our first Bitcoin and cryptocurrency trading and investing channel. We started that because we didn't see anybody else talking about it, on how to trade and invest in cryptocurrencies. And back then, I can literally memorize everybody that was broadcasting about Bitcoin back then. It wasn't even about crypto back then. Everybody's just talking about Bitcoin because it was like 99% dominant. It made up the entire market. And I remember those days. Like we had that exact same conference in America. The same Bitcoin conference that had taken place in Amsterdam. There was ones that took place
in Miami then like a few months later, right?
Yeah, the Miami Bitcoin conference is one. And back then it was a few hundred people, and then there was the Bitcoin conference in California. I think it was around Silicon Valley, around San Jose, the city of San Jose. And it was the same thing, it was a few hundred people. You can Google it and find videos of like Andreas Antonopoulos talking there.
And almost empty room.
Yeah, it's like there's only a few people there, you know. I remember at the Texas Bitcoin conference in 2014, I was sitting there. We were listening at a conference. I was one of the speakers there, and me and my business partner LeonFu.com, we were sitting there, and we turned around, and Andreas was sitting right behind us. So that's back when it was really, really early. So you said earlier that you mentioned that we wanted to get more involved in this. Who is the we? When you say we,
myself, but also like Alex, I mean, he's a really long-time friend of mine. I knew him since like 2005 or something. I think he was not even 18 by then when he first met. So still friends. He was responsible then to get me into Bitcoin. A couple of years later, I was responsible to get him into Vietnam. So since 2 years, he's also living with us here, running our company. But back then we were also looking for opportunities in Germany just to make something happen because there was also not much going on. And like these early Bitcoin meetups, you probably remember like a lot of energy. Like every second person had some ideas for some projects which you could do. And the same in Germany, which is still, if you look like, for example, the amount of nodes which are run, Germany is the second country after the US regarding like Bitcoin nodes which are run. So there's a lot of interested people, technical people who really understand these things. But Germany itself is not a very entrepreneurial friendly country. So a lot of people tried to do something there, tried to set something up there, but in the end got all blocked out by regulations and so on.
Okay, so when you say that it's not a very entrepreneurship friendly country, could you elaborate on that a little bit? Because some of the people that live outside of the Western countries, they think that the Western countries are the best places to do business. And here you are saying, hey, it was not very good for a startup or entrepreneurs. But can you elaborate on what conditions made it difficult?
I mean, still like made in Germany has a very high reputation, but if you really look at what drives like the German economy, I mean, it's all like big business which have been built like in the 19th century, maybe after the Second World War when there was also a bit less regulation because you had to rebuild the economy. But otherwise, I mean, like the whole internet wave and so on, Germany kind of missed. Also this wave they're kind of missing now. It's very hard to start up a business, and just compare with what we see here around us. I mean, people just selling noodles, bread, whatever.
Yeah, these people here are just selling whatever they want.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you want to do something like this in Germany, expect like a couple of months until you get every fucking license and stamp and this and that.
Yeah.
And then even if you run the business, half of your time just goes to fulfill all the requirements by bureaucracy. Then when you make some money, half of your money goes straight away to pay taxes. It's just not a country where it really is very rewarding to run your own business if you can start it up.
Especially when you're a startup.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, basically what they told us back at the time, because like there was not much infrastructure around. There was, I mean, people there still had to send money basically to Japan from Mt. Gox, which was like the only big exchange at the time.
Did you lose Bitcoins at Mt. Gox?
Luckily in Germany there was some P2P exchange, Bitcoin.de, and I was using this one, so this prevented me from Mt. Gox, but very little infrastructure. Also like Coinbase and whatever, they all were not in Europe, so there was not many places. So we also thought, okay, we are here in Frankfurt, let's maybe also build some exchange there, because I mean it's a very underserved market at the time. But basically what they told us is like, okay, you need to get a banking license with 5 million euro security bond. And actually, you might also have to charge the value-added tax, 19% on it. So if Bitcoin costs you $100 at the time, it would cost you $119 your customers to buy it, because you have to charge the value-added tax. And
you're like, screw that, huh?
Yeah, I mean, we worked with a couple of months with the lawyers there, paid them quite a bunch of money. The lawyers did good work, so we don't blame them. But after a few months, basically just sitting there, paying the lawyers and doing nothing, we decided, hey, screw that. Our life is short. The opportunity is also limited time-wise. And we basically ported over the software which we already had ready and just said, okay, let's do it in Vietnam. And that's kind of how we ended up over here.
So was that a big, dramatic shift for you to go from living in Germany, a heavily developed country, into an emerging market like Vietnam is right here?
I mean, I was
like culturally
kind of prepared already, because I was visiting Vietnam for several years already. So I kind of knew where we are getting into and had already like a feel for the market. But obviously, it's a very, very different business environment than from like Germany. In Germany, everything is like very straightforward. If things don't work the way forward, they don't work. But otherwise, it's just straight line.
Here, even when it doesn't work, there's ways to make it work.
Yeah, there's always like, okay, this straight way doesn't work, but there's always ways around it somehow. Running a business here, definitely much more roller coaster like. Sometimes you get hit, sometimes you can make things just work in a much easier fashion than you can do it in the West.
Yeah, in a separate video, you and I are going to talk about doing business in Asia and some of our experiences, so we can share with the Western companies and people who want to come here and do business. But back to when you came here to Ho Chi Minh City, talk about what inspired you to settle in Ho Chi Minh City. Why not Hanoi or Da Nang, or there's other cities that are very big here in Vietnam. What inspired you to settle here in Ho Chi Minh City?
Ho Chi Minh City is like the economic capital basically of Vietnam. There was actually a couple of years ago in the New York Times, I think 2015 or so, a very nice article like the heart of capitalism is well alive in Ho Chi Minh City, something like this.
Yeah.
Very good article to kind of get the vibe which we have here. Hanoi, I mean, is more like the government city, so everything is a bit more...
the political capital.
Yeah, everything is a bit more restricted. So like at 9 p.m. basically they shut down the city and it's just dark there. While here it's like 24/7 hustling and bustling.
Okay, so just so you guys know, like when Dominik is saying that Ho Chi Minh City is like the economic capital of Vietnam, I read somewhere where the government statistics show that Ho Chi Minh City alone is responsible for over 1/3 of the entire country's GDP. And like when I talk to the regular local people here, especially the ones that move from the north down to Ho Chi Minh City here to do business, even they say that, you know, sometimes people up there they're like in shock how this one city is responsible for that much economic activity in Vietnam. So I would definitely agree and say that this is the city for serious entrepreneurs. This is the city for on the streets where I grew up in America, in the poor ghetto black neighborhoods. We would call it hustlers. You know, like if you're willing to hustle and work and make build your business, this is definitely a good city to consider. You know, so what year did you arrive here in Ho Chi Minh City?
I really moved over here then was like April or May 2014.
Okay.
So the business actually had launched already since 2-3 months.
Okay.
So yeah, and I mean that's basically then when we started really to take it more serious. We launched our first product, Bitcoin VM, was like Coinbase-like brokerage exchange in March 2014, which was a bit unfortunate timing because if people might still remember, late February 2014, Mt. Gox vanished with $500 million, which was dominating the global headlines there for the next month. And yeah, basically 2 weeks after this happened, we just came around and said like, okay, now we are starting also a Bitcoin exchange here. The public perception and the media they were very skeptical about this idea. But I guess after now 5-6 years in the market, we have kind of proven ourselves here.
Okay, now talk about the Saigon Bitcoin Meetup. You know, I've had the opportunity to speak at your event multiple times already in Vietnam, right? Talk about that. When did it cross your mind to start that community up in Vietnam?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I'm coming kind of from this community background. I really enjoyed it also over there in Frankfurt. But back at the time, there was no public places to discuss anything like this, to meet other people who are interested into it. So we got together with like, 2 other people, which were basically like the founding members there. Was Diana Ngo, who was back at the time writer for Cointelegraph. She's still kind of involved in the space. Not that active in the community anymore because she's married now, have a kid. Also a local student, Koa, who has now a full-time job that's also not that involved anymore. We hope to have them around. Maybe that's something to mention for later. We have the 5-year party coming up. So by November 2014, we had done the first meetup. It was not easy to organize it because back at the time, we asked various venues around, hey, we want to organize a Bitcoin meetup.
Yeah.
And the venue owners, Bitcoin, nah, we can't talk about this, scary. Police will raid the place.
Yeah.
So luckily we had then at some point Officiance, which is like a French-Vietnamese co-working space, outsourcing company. They finally agreed to host us. So that's when the first meetup then finally took place in November 2014. Had a good turnout, was almost 50 people showing up.
That's a lot for 2014.
That's a lot.
We
had like a whole class of banking students also joining in there. So it was a really good turnout. And I mean, we also had a person in the background which might have been spying a bit for the government, looking if we start some revolution. But I just since they didn't see any signs of this, we kind of got left alone, and has been running since then.
Okay, and then I think you had mentioned offline that you guys had to rebrand the Bitcoin Saigon, the exchange, the exchange back then, because it was like a .vn or...
For the exchange, the Bitcoin Vietnam exchange, we had some interruption there basically in 2018. We have been in discussions with the regulatory bodies since then. Right now Bitcoin is still unregulated here in Vietnam. So talk to the State Bank, the Ministry of Justice, the Ministry of Public Security. So all these ministries you kind of know, you have to find your arrangements with. They know what we are doing. What happened there in early 2018, the Ministry of Communication and Information was not happy that we had a blog on our website without having a license as a news network, and because the blog had a comment function below, so like a button where you can write your comment to an article. You would need a license as a social media blog. The actual background was there was like a big scandal here in Vietnam with some Ponzi scheme which was collapsing at the time.
And so they were hammering everybody. They were...
you had a lot of bad news, people protesting here on the street. And the government had to show, they are caring, doing something about it. And that's why we, as the most prominent company sticking our heads out here, got slapped down. So the Bitcoin.vn domain had been suspended back then. There's still discussions going on around the domain. We moved our service to an international domain in the meanwhile. We had to pay some fines because, no license for the news network and the social media network. It was really you had just every 2 weeks an article, how do you buy Bitcoin? Or maybe it's an interview with your partners. It's not like we run a huge organization there, just what your normal startup does. But
Okay. And then, so what, you came in 2014, you got a 5-year anniversary coming up on the, November 20?
Yes, that's for the community. As I said, we had the first meetup of the local Bitcoin community. Took place here in November 2014.
Okay.
End of this month, 28, 29. 29 is the public part. 29th of November, we have then a whole day of talks, speeches, seminars around Bitcoin. Zen is going to be one of the speakers. You are going to be the closer with the highlight at the end. So we have a lot of friends coming over the years. We have met and worked with from Hong Kong, Korea, Japan. Really smart people. I think it's the best lineup we probably have here since 2016 when we run the Block for Asia conference. Going really deep into the socioeconomic, the technical backgrounds behind this stuff. So it's not your usual blockchain type of event where some Chinese company comes down here and just buy our tokens. It's really about what's actually behind it. So if people are really interested to learn something, to get a better understanding of the fundamentals behind the whole thing, you should check it out. And very interesting people there.
Okay. And then so that's going to be a 2-day.
It's one day the public.
Event?
One day the public part. We have some private part before for the hardcore of the community and our guests. But
so if somebody wants to speak at your event, what's the best way to contact you, or if they want to sponsor your event, the 5-year anniversary event here in Ho Chi Minh City? What's the best way? Should they contact you directly, or who should they contact?
They can contact me. They can contact the community pages, which are monitored by a couple of people.
Okay.
So I'm on Twitter. The community is on Twitter. Also on Facebook.
And who is the right? Because anytime you have an event like this, there's always people rushing in to sponsor you guys. For the event or help sponsor it. What are the ideal businesses that you are looking for that you would prefer to sponsor your event? Because I know obviously you don't want no BitConnect or OneCoin, bullshit OneCoin scam to sponsor your event. But what are some of the legitimate blockchain companies that could benefit from coming to your event and getting exposure to the Asian markets?
So I mean, yeah, as you said, we have some standards. I mean, compared to a lot of like the other local events, which just take money from wherever they can get the money. For us, it's important that like the sponsors have a kind of understanding of the values and spirits also behind these Bitcoin communities. I mean, there's a lot of companies out there which have been founded by like early adopters. So they understand where this whole thing is coming from. That it's not only about making a quick buck, but it's also more like kind of revolutionary way.
Don't come to your 5-year event trying to pitch some stupid ICO or something like that.
Yes, it's really people who should kind of understand what values it stands for.
Okay. Now, what when you and I talk offline, and by the way, guys, I was first introduced to Dominik by our mutual friend Tone Vase. So I forgot to mention at the beginning of this video. I appreciate Tone. If you're watching this, for making this introduction, because you've been a valuable source and a network and a contact here, and a friend also here in Vietnam. So talk about like the people that are sponsoring your events, or like especially for this 5-year anniversary event. Is there a deadline? Because I know it's at the end of this month. That way you can get things prepared and everything.
I mean, ideally as soon as possible, since we start to create now all the flyers and material. I mean, they still can come up later, but means that of course the time of exposure is a bit more limited when you just come in late. I mean, ideally at least a week before they should be in, because otherwise it's getting tight to get the logos they gotta get on all the material,
the visas and everything to come into this into Vietnam. So now you your office here, your staff is here in District 4, in Ho Chi Minh City, right? So what is your future plans, or what do you have coming on for the crypto community here in Vietnam and in Asia in the end of 2019? What projects have you been working on besides the 5-year anniversary of the Saigon Bitcoin Meetup? What do you have planned for the community here coming up, in 2020?
I mean, with the community, more or less kind of keep the spirit going there. I mean, normally how it runs, we really have like in the local community weekly meetups here at some local restaurants, bars. Maybe once a month we have some speaker, like you have been a couple of times by now, where it's then like a talk where we give people insights on certain topics. I'm not sure about like the bigger events, because it's always quite a bit of a hassle to organize it. This month definitely it takes at least half of my time just to work on helping with the organization of the event with the other guys. So not too sure what, besides like the normal meetup, is happening there 2020, but more or less just keep the spirit up there, keep it going. For us as a company, definitely looking forward to expand our service further. As I just told, like we started out with the retail brokerage. Over the years, we have really expanded our service offerings, like a full range of services around the exchange between Vietnam Dong and Bitcoin. So we have now trading platform, which we are looking to upgrade in the coming year. We have a remittance service, we have an OTC trade desk, we run a couple of ATMs. The next batch is coming already, should be arriving.
Aren't you guys the first guys to put Bitcoin ATMs in Vietnam?
Right, the first machine put up in 2016 here. Took a while to get it really running properly, but we also started now expanding the team there, running these machines. It gets more and more professional, the volumes are growing every month. We ordered a couple of more machines, so that's one of the growth sectors we are looking for in 2020.
Now, I talked to you about this before, about setting up a crypto company that is compliant with Western financial regulations and laws to survive the long term. Like, I see a lot of companies here that are just looking at the short term, and they're just get whatever they can and move on. You've taken a more slow and steady long-term approach. Talk about that. Like you're doing something that's completely different from all the other Vietnamese companies here. Talk about what's your motivation and inspiration behind that.
I still think, like, even if this is not a standard way to do business here in Vietnam for most people, where it's really very short-term oriented, people look what they can get now, and it's kind of partially can explain by the history of the country. I mean, you had 40 years of war basically. 10 years really where like the political situation after the war was very challenging until like the mid-80s. They did the market reforms. So that people had this kind of mindset, okay, I need to survive the day. And which is still kind of prevalent, like, okay, I just take whatever I can get now. And a lot of people don't understand that harms their long-term opportunities. Because even if this is for a lot of people kind of the business standard here, that's not what like Western companies who are looking for partners or whatever locally are looking at. So I was thinking there is really that, okay, if we abide by more Western standards, you are also automatically like the go-to company then for people who are looking to partner with some companies in Vietnam, because we operate on a level and like of business ethics and long-term perspective, which is, I mean, same level, similar level there with like what the companies have from the West. And we have seen a lot of companies from the West coming here, getting kind of screwed over because they didn't understand the business mindset here. We ourselves had made our mistakes there.
So have we. We'll share about that in a separate video.
Yes. So, but I believe that this is also a way to create a certain mode here because, people come, do their kind of quick grab the money scams, which might be in the short term even more beneficial than like doing it on a long term. But creating like this long-term mode, which really takes several years of building your reputation, building up the business in a serious way, that's not something which can easily be replicated then.
Okay. Well, to wrap up this video here, is there anything that you want to plug or you want to share about your business or your community here, about the anniversary meetup?
I mean, right now, major focus, of course, anniversary. It's not even 3 weeks anymore, so we need to start get the word out. If you are in Vietnam or generally Southeast Asia, consider dropping by. Tickets pretty cheaply priced, like $50 or something to attend the conference. I think it's a lot of value which you can get there. Network with some people who are really long in the space, have a thorough understanding of what they're talking about. And support the community.
And like Dominic said, you know, I was invited there to come and share some of my staking experience here. So at the 5-year anniversary of the Saigon Bitcoin Meetup, I'll be talking about real-world numbers of what I've been doing with the staking and how you guys can do that. So come and check it out, and we'll look forward to seeing you guys there. So thanks for joining us on this. Okay, so.